So if you could tell me a little bit about how you started and what your origin story is.
Sure, yeah, that's a great question. As long as I can remember, even since undergraduate school, I've always been interested in nutrition, passionate about nutrition and wellness and lifestyle change. But I think diabetes came a bit later for me. I don't have a family member with type 2 diabetes. I didn't witness someone go through the tragedy of living with diabetes, but I certainly saw many of my patients going through that, coming in frustrated, not being able to get answers or solutions, getting passed around from doctor to doctor, just being put on more and more medications. And they weren't happy about it. Their doctors were frustrated. They weren't getting results. And for me, that was a calling for me. I said, there's got to be a solution to this. And we're going back 20 years at this point. I've been helping people using a nutritional functional medicine approach for almost 2 decades. And I think at that point, something was birthed in me that made me want to really solve diabetes and solve blood sugar problems. Interestingly, it was years later, probably 10 years went by, and I started having my own problems with weight and struggling with my blood sugar. And I found myself at almost 220 pounds with high cholesterol and high triglyceride levels, and my blood sugar slowly creeping up. I remember one night waking up in a puddle of sweat, and it was one of those moments, middle of the night, where I just said, what is going on? What is going on with my health? I was under tremendous stress, had a couple of young kids, buying out a partner in my practice. And at that point, it was sort of a wake-up call. I remember going downstairs in my home, checking my own blood pressure and finding out that it was very high, scary high. And at that point, said, I got to do something different. And so this is 10 years ago. I put myself on my own program, basically, but I started following my own advice, really, is what happened. Because even doctors, the best of us, can sometimes slip, and we can get too busy and too distracted. So I started following my own advice and was able to lose almost 50 pounds, get down under 170 pounds. And at that point, felt 20 years younger. All my numbers got in line. My cholesterol became normal. My blood sugar became better than it ever has been. And still to this day, I'm able to maintain that. But that gave me that renewed passion for really, I think, getting some empathy with people and understanding what they're going through. And that is where diabetes became my passion. And so I see it now with women who have thyroid problems, men who struggle with their weight, adrenal dysfunction, and other hormone imbalances, that there's this link between hormone problems and a strong link with thyroid and blood sugar. And if we can find a way to optimize blood sugar and take that stress off the body, people lose weight, they feel better, and they protect their health. And to me, that's what drives me to want to help people with their blood sugar and diabetes.
How do problems with blood sugar relate to thyroid issues?
Yeah, there's such a strong connection between thyroid problems, particularly hypothyroidism, and blood sugar imbalance and diabetes. And it's a two-way street. They feed off of one another. For example, I see about 30 to 40% of my patients have some sort of thyroid imbalance. Now, it may not be diagnosed as hypothyroidism or Hashimoto's disease, but they have some sort of thyroid imbalance. So we check thyroid hormones on every single patient who walks through the door, not just the TSH test, but we look at T4 thyroxine and T3 levels, total and free levels, as well as the thyroid antibodies to see, is there a potential problem here? And it's amazing. Most doctors don't even check. And what we find is, again, 30 to 40% of our patients who come in here with blood sugar issues, diabetes, actually have thyroid problems. Some of them know it, some of them didn't know it, and there's a very strong correlation. So one thing that happens is when you don't make enough thyroid hormone or your thyroid hormone levels aren't balanced, because you're on the wrong medication or the wrong dose of medication, or the doctors haven't put the time in to balance those. One of the things that happens, of course, the thyroid hormone is the master metabolic hormone of the body. It drives the metabolism. It's the key that starts the ignition of the car and gets that metabolic machinery going. And when that's not happening or not happening effectively, one of the things downstream from that gets affected is your blood sugar metabolism. It can affect the way your mitochondria take in fatty acids and glucose and turn those into energy. It can affect cellular uptake of glucose. It can affect how insulin actually acts on the insulin receptors in the cells and how that effect controls and regulates blood sugar. In other words, it can make you more insulin resistant, which is another reason people with low thyroid function have a hard time losing weight or maintaining weight. So these are keys as far as how low thyroid function affects blood sugar, but it also goes the other way around. So you can be working on thyroid function, you could be working on balancing thyroid hormones, working on suppressing or balancing thyroid hormone or Hashimoto's antibodies. But if your blood sugar is not balanced, that's going to put a tremendous stress on your system. We see there's a connection between, again, insulin and thyroid hormone. When you have diabetes or prediabetes, many times your insulin levels rise. That causes you to retain or gain weight. It also suppresses thyroid hormone, and it suppresses the activity of thyroid hormone in the cell. So one thing you may want to look at, if you're doing everything else right, check your blood sugar, check your insulin levels, because if those are off, that can be a deal breaker.
Right. So it's all about balancing, you said, and it's more or less that what sets you apart from a lot of other doctors is that you try to find a balance instead of trying to just prescribe somebody a medication which could throw them out of whack.
Sure, and in functional medicine, we look at the whole picture. We look at the big picture. So rather than saying, oh, this person has a thyroid problem, so let's check their thyroid hormones, get them on a thyroid replacement therapy regimen, and everything will be good. It doesn't always work that way. In fact, many times it doesn't work that way. So we have to look beyond just the thyroid hormones at sex hormones and blood sugar and insulin and other factors. And one thing that I'm talking about right now is this blood sugar connection, because it's largely ignored. A lot of people don't pay attention to it, and it's extremely important if you want to optimize thyroid function and thyroid hormone balance. It's essential to make sure you're optimizing blood sugar and insulin.